Hey there, and welcome to the KidzMatter podcast, your go-to resource for all things children's ministry. Each week, we bring you fresh ideas, inspiring stories, and practical insights to help you lead, love, and serve kids like never before. Whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned pro, we're glad you're here. Let's get started. It's time for another episode of the KidzMatter podcast. My name is Hannah Augustine, and today we'll be having an incredible conversation with Kris Smoll from Alliance Church. She's been in ministry for 30 years and has so much to bring to the table, but today we're going to be talking about volunteer training. This may not be something that's on your radar. We're going to discuss why it's important to have consistent accountability for your volunteers as you train them to do all that God has called them to do within your ministry. It's going to be a great conversation, but before we jump in, let's check out a word from one of our sponsors. Want to engage hearts in God's call to make disciples? KidzMatter and Compassion International have partnered to create Called to Care, a 90-minute immersive experience that introduces kids to global missions. Through 3 immersive, multi-sensory segments, children will learn what life is like for kids living in poverty, what God says about these kids, and how He calls us to care for them. This event will invoke empathy in the hearts of your younger members, encouraging them to step into the instruction of Jesus and follow in His footsteps. Visit www.compassion.com/C2C register to learn more. We can't wait to jump into today's conversation, so let's get started. Well, hello and welcome back to the KidzMatter podcast. My name is Hannah Augustine, and I'm here with a new friend of mine, Kris Smoll. We were just talking locations, and so we found out we're actually about as far apart as you can get north to south in the United States. But we're going to be talking today about training. And this is something that y'all may know if you've seen on our Facebook group. We're doing some free coaching. And so as I've been meeting with a couple of you, we've talked about volunteer trainings, what to do, when to do, how often to do. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is just how to have a rhythm and a system for training. Because whether you have 5 volunteers or 50 volunteers, we want to make sure they're well trained and that they're equipped to do what God has called them to do. So, but first, Kris, can you just share, I already know some of these answers, but how long have you been in KidMin? How'd you get here? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I've been in KidMin for about 30 years. And basically it was a calling on my life when I was a kid, like 12 years old. I started volunteering right back into children's ministry, and God just kept opening doors and opening doors. I went to Moody Bible Institute. I got my degree there, came back to my home church, which is pretty unique. And since then, I have been here for 30 years doing ministry, watching it grow from my all-time goal is to have 100 people in my children's ministries with kids and leaders. We have 700 kids on a Sunday morning, about 800 kids at our Awana Club on Tuesday night, and then, of course, around 500 volunteers working in children's ministry on a regular basis in our ministry. And even though I've been in church, it's really been different churches. Every time you have a senior pastor shift or a facility shift or whatever it may be, or just even like the shutdown of COVID, you came back to a different church. Sure. So there's a lot of different changes. I just physically happen to be at the same spot, even though the church has changed around me. So it's been a lot of seasons and a lot of experiences of highs and lows in ministry. And I think that's what really just is real. I mean, it's real. It's a real children's ministry. That's what I live right now.
I love
it.
In
addition to that, we did write a curriculum at our church for our church, because I really wanted to be very intentional on how we disciple and how we train and how we equip our leaders so we can multiply really effectively. And again, that curriculum, people started asking me for it. And I'm like, hey, if God blessed our church with the ability to write this and create it, I was just starting to share it, which then eventually grew into a global ministry. So now we're in 45 different countries, 7 different languages, and God is just using it around the globe and in the United States. And I have to say, at the KidzMatter conference, whoever was at my booth and came and stopped and talked with us, we loved talking to you. Again, we kind of view ourselves as a boutique of curriculum. We're not a big box brand, but we're the boutique. We're the real people on the ground, writing it, playing with it, keeping it relevant on a weekly basis. And it just really comes back to the heart that we really want to disciple kids. So that's a little bit about myself. And I do have a husband and 2 boys and 2 daughter-in-laws and 3 grandkids too now. So
yay! How old are the grandkids?
They are 8 months, 3 months, and 2.5 years old.
Oh, they're a little
They're,
bit
they're
so
super fun and super cute. So
I love that. I want to speak for a second to just your longevity. I think a lot of times in ministry, I don't know the formal stats. I've heard people say KidMin, it's normally like 2 years is how long people last. I haven't researched that. Um, so whenever I hear someone over that 2 year mark, I'm like, you're doing great. Hang in there. But I think we romanticize in ministry these opportunities to change places and to go to different places. And don't get me wrong, like there are seasons to move and to go, and you'll know, like I've always said, there's a release in your spirit and you'll know when it's time to go. But there's this book that I read maybe 5 years ago called The Power of Place by Daniel Gross, and he talks about how we've lost the art of being planted and the art of being rooted somewhere. And he tells this story of a couple in California who were working at a smaller church and they wanted to go like to the next big thing. And so they were looking and trying to find a new job, and they felt like the Lord said, go buy your burial plots. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, we're not going to stay here till we die. And he's like, you actually are. And they went and they bought burial plots and they stayed in that church. And I don't know that I don't remember how the story ends. I don't think it didn't blow up to like this, 10,000 member church, but they were faithful. And I think that picture of, obviously you've seen a lot of growth. And but some of you may be listening, you may go, I've been in the same place for 30 years and I haven't seen growth. But your faithfulness is so important, and just having that heart to be planted where you're called to be. So, Kris, thank you for that example of longevity and faithfulness and just honor to where God has placed you. And like you said, through different seasons, different leaders, that changes the game. Like you said, it's not the same church you started in, but you've been faithful.
Yeah, it's very true. And I have to say, too, the one thing that's held me, I think, the longest here, too, besides God's calling, is, I've always created a prayer team around me. I have like 8 people that pray consistently for me and the ministry, and we pray every Wednesday night via Zoom. Pray for an hour over the ministry and anything I have. And that, you can't do this by yourself.
No.
You can't do it by yourself. You need a team of people surrounding you and on their knees for you on a regular basis. So I give a lot of credit to that, to God, obviously, for holding us together. So yeah.
It is so good. I've shared on other, like our KidzMatter Pro podcasts and with some of my coaching friends. I truly believe you need to look for that person and maybe multiple people in your ministry that have a heart, not just for your ministry, but for you, and who, like you said, are going to pray for you, are going to lift your arms, are going to be that person on Sunday morning that says, did you have a bottle of water yet today? Like, did you get a coffee? Do you need anything? And it's not about having people that are all about me, but it's having people that have a heart to make sure you're thriving as well. And, just having that support team around you. And there are people in your church that may say, hey, I'm not called to serve in the 2-year-old room, but I will pray with you on Wednesday nights, or I will, call you during the week to check in, or I will come and help oversee your email, whatever that is. But, as we're thinking through even some of these training elements, thinking through who can you train up to do next level things that are going to lift your arms, and even getting creative, not just physical tasks, but spiritual ones. Who can pray over your environments? Who can pray over you? Who can pray over your curriculum? Who can, as they're prepping crafts, be praying? Because that spiritual side is so critical.
Right. Very true. Very true.
Jumping into this training side of things, why do you think, after you've got years of experience under your belt, why is training important for our volunteers when they're new, when they're seasoned? Why is that a critical piece of ministry?
You know what? If you aren't intentional on your training, you're going to lose your volunteers. You train to retain. That is what you do. You're training to retain your volunteers, as well as, obviously, you want them to be so effective every time they walk through your door. And if they're effectively reaching kids and discipling kids, and I'm saying from rocking babies into any position you have, there's no position less, right? And you value them by skilling them up. I mean, every adult, any kid, even in a sport, you always are growing and learning and skilling up. So we have to keep taking our volunteers and saying, how do we make them better? How do we make them better? I mean, if you really have a volunteer leave your training saying, I knew that already, that's on you. You needed to make sure that you skilled your people up so they walk away saying, I didn't know that, and I feel more equipped to better reach my kids for Christ.
That's so good. I think we used to say at my last church, it's not about what we want from you, it's what we want for you. And we use that in a lot of contexts. But I think even when it comes to our training, how are you helping your team members be better in their families, in their workplace, in their, not just in your ministry, but are you helping them become better disciples and better followers of Jesus, and teaching them leadership principles and all of these things that, yes, it's going to help your ministry, but you're also saying, hey, I believe in you and I want to invest in you. And so it's recognizing it's not just about, I want to make sure to heart all the ratios. They need to know those things. But also, maybe am I talking about the latest leadership podcast I listened to? Am I training them on how to lead their fellow volunteers and how to lead children? Because that's a leadership opportunity, right? That we're setting an example and we're training them up to be leaders. So I love that, what you just said about, if we're not challenging them in our training, then we're probably missing the mark if they feel like they're coming and just hearing, okay, I already knew this, or,
Right. And a training is different than a meeting. Let's remember that. Because a meeting is where you make decisions on things. Well, what theme should we do? Or what curriculum we should use? Or what time? That should be all planned out ahead of time so that when people come to a training, you're actually moving them forward.
That's good. That's a really good distinction. And being aware of which volunteers are invited to a meeting versus a training. Because you can't have all 500 of your team members at the meeting, but you can have them all at the training.
Definitely your core, your main investors can come to a meeting.
Yes.
Training is everybody.
Yeah, that's really good. What kind of training structure, again, you've mentioned 500 volunteers, you've got Awana, you've got multiple services on Sunday morning. So, birth to, I'm assuming you oversee birth, is that to like 5th? Is that kind of the sixth? Okay. So you've got, all these environments. So volunteers across the board. What kind of training structure do you follow?
Right. So we have a basic outline. It's like we do a video, a DL, because Discoveryland is our ministry name too. Discoveryland DL 101. Our 101 series is an online video training on safety and security.
Love it.
Because I don't want to cover safety and security when my people are actually sitting in front of me. Right. Anybody new needs to go through our video series on safety and security ahead of time, at home, at your own free time. You fill out a form, let us know you did it. 201. If you are new to my church, you watch the 101 at your own time. 201 is a Zoom that they will do with their coordinator, whoever's in charge of that specific area. Yeah. And it's a PowerPoint, and we're basically going to get to know you. And then we're going to tell you the basics of the ministry. How does the curriculum work? How is the morning schedule? Where do you pick up your lanyard? Where, all these different basic things are done via Zoom. And a lot of times it's at night, when kids are in bed. It has a flexibility edge to it. Yeah. Now, if they want to come in here and do it live with the person, we're totally fine with that. But we find that Zoom is our ticket for that.
Yeah.
You get to the 301 level, that's our fall kickoff or our summer kickoff.
Okay.
And that training basically starts with, we do like something fun as people are coming in, giving away gift cards just for a few minutes. And then we do vision casting for about 15. Then they break up into their team huddle. So they're specific grade-based teams.
Yep.
And after that 15 minutes with their team, they go to a 40-minute skill-based training that will, if you're a lead teacher, you're going to a skill-based training on teaching.
Okay.
You're a shepherd, we call them shepherds, like the helper in the classroom. You're going to go to that class. If you're a Discover Time, which is our hands-on learning, you're going to go to that specific training. But we are getting very, very intentional on skills. At this point in time, we often have a basic level and an advanced level too, because you have people who are first just coming in and they might be a newer teacher. We need to cover the basics, but we have to up our game for those advanced teachers. And we're going to go into a lot deeper subjects with them at that training. Then you're like saying, well, who in the world does all this training? There's a lot of breakouts here, right?
Right.
It really becomes our super advanced teachers and leaders who are proven to be faithful for the long haul, and they have the gift of training. They come back and then they train our other people.
So good.
It's always that promotion up kind of feel, like when you get asked to be one of our trainers, that's a high honor. And that means you're going to be able to meet with me one-on-one in my office, and we're going to go through your training. We're going to make sure, I actually write the outline for it, then they enhance it with their own personality, but I'm equipping them to be a master teacher at that point in time. So there's a whole multiplication factor going on. And again, when you have this, your retention rate of your volunteers is really high. Like our Sunday morning retention rate's about 80% for Sunday volunteers.
Wow. That's amazing.
And again, you don't have to recruit as much if you retain your volunteers.
It's very true.
Right.
And what you're describing here is this investment that, like you said, you're challenging them to new skills, and you're saying, hey, let's enhance your skills and let's take what you're already gifted at and help you do it more and do it better and do it more consistently. And that's going to bring people back. I shared in a breakout at the conference, when I was working on layered leadership in my ministry, and who could I call up to the next level? Mm-hmm. And there was this, she was in her late 20s, early 30s, and just sharp, and was such a good third grade leader, small group leader. And my boss said to me, she's like, hey, I think you should consider having her be a coach. I was like, oh, but she's such a good small group leader. Like, I don't know if I can pull her. And she said, well, up to you, you make the call. So I thought about it, ended up deciding to go to her. And I said, hey, would you want to be a coach? And she said, I'm glad you asked. She's like, because I was actually thinking about quitting because I felt like I wasn't using my gifts and I wasn't being challenged. Mm-hmm. And that was such a lesson to me of, if I'm not, when you have somebody in your ministry that is hungry and sharp and committed, if you're not challenging them, they're not going to stay. They're going to see that other opportunity in the youth ministry, in the adult ministry, whatever, thing that's going to maybe challenge them a little bit more. So I love that you guys have built in this advanced, growth track, so that you're saying, hey, we want to not just keep you on the same level. It's not about fairness or ability. It's about saying, hey, you're more experienced, and we want to honor that, and we want to help develop that. I think that's really cool.
Right. In addition to that those kickoff trainings, we also have what we call a 501, and that's for teachers intense training. And that's a good 2.5-hour training on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon. And we do this maybe twice a year. And you only have to come once, but we find our teachers keep repeatedly come. When you make it mandatory that every first-time teacher has to go. But again, they just keep coming because they know when I teach it, because it's a high-level training, I'm going to teach it myself. Yeah. And I will always add in the more current trends, what the world is talking about. We're talking more about trauma, but we're also bringing in, how do you weave the gospel into your lesson? What are you going to do with classroom management as a lead teacher? Why do we put you as a lead teacher? We're trusting you to take the spiritual temperature of your kids and your fellow leaders. We equip them on all that stuff. So that's an intense training. And then we also do what we call lunch and learns following church on a Sunday morning. Every so often, maybe once a quarter, we'll do a lunch and learn. And we have one coming up in 2 weeks, and it's basically Ready, Set, Gospel. And it's for specific training on how to share the gospel with kids. And they actually practice it with their partner. It's one thing to hear it, but it's another thing to practice it.
Very true.
And during those, we'll have Olive Garden, soup and salad, and bam, we just go at it. And there's different ones that are more we strongly encourage, and some of them are just we encourage. So there's different levels, definitely, of trainings that we have happening. It has to be part of the DNA of your ministry, not just, it's not just an event. You know what I mean? You have to weave it in. And then we also send out weekly team huddles to our volunteers too. And in it, the goal is, we're going to give them any updates for that Sunday, but we're going to give training tips. In our curriculum, we also have training tips. So they're getting trained all over the place to become better and more skilled in their ministry, for sure.
I love that. And I think what you said is so critical, that it's the DNA, and you've built it into the culture of your ministry. And I think some of us, maybe some of us listening, are going, man, I wish that was my culture. Now, what I would encourage when I've, met with people, I'm like, you need to start with your fresh people. Like, when you bring someone new on, set the expectation for what you want to do, because they're new and they don't know what to expect. Then, as you set the expectation with your new team members, you start working with your experienced, your seasoned team members to shift that culture. And I think a lot of times, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but I know a lot of times it's maybe one-on-one, hey, we're really trying to develop this training culture, or, because emails don't always work. So having those one-on-one, taking people to lunch, having a phone call, like, hey, what do you think about this new training module? Like, if you're starting from scratch and you are currently not doing any training, sitting down, with me, reaching out to someone like Kris and saying, hey, how do I even start? But what would you say, Kris, to someone who's trying to shift the culture and to get people to want to come, that it feels like this is a valuable use of their time?
What I would do is get your top 5 core people and influencers, right, in a room, and put them by a whiteboard and say, what we want to do in order to make really effective disciples. From your perspective, what do we need to strengthen in our ministry? And get that on the table. Just put that on the whiteboard right off first and say, now, what my goal is because God is just putting on my heart that we just can't make kids who come in and not come out of church. They just can't come in and just play church. Right. We really want to be disciples. We look at what the world looks like right now, and we see how dark it's getting and how people are twisting scriptures, and there's so many different things. We have to get our kids more grounded. Right. Now, we look at our whiteboard here, and we say, what are our key things that we need to work on? Are these key things even about discipleship? Like if we're talking about, well, our kids are just all running over the place. Okay, but why? Let's get to the deeper thing. Are we really getting them into the Word of God? Are they really engaged? What do we need to do to make it effective? And then say, guys, as a team, are we all in as far as going at this, right? Yeah. It's like putting the game together as a coach and saying, if we're going to send our people out on the field, they have to be equipped. Are you in with me? And who would be good at training? That's a whole nother subject in itself. I often bring I do interviews. Sometimes I'll bring a principal from a different school in, or public school. Right. And I interview them and say, tell me about the kids that were in. No, I don't let that dominate. Right. It's an intro, it's a hook. Then I switch to our curriculum and I'll say, okay, guys, you heard what he says. Here's why we need to teach the Word that effectively. This is why you need to come in with the Bible. Teach kids how to use the Bible, how to open a Bible. And people are going, well, that's a lot of work. No. If you put the expectations here, people rise to an expectation. Right. If you put it lower and you my people just don't want to come to training, or they just don't want to prep. No, that's not an option. No, we're going to prep. That's like your senior pastor coming in and saying, well, he didn't want to prep. He's just going to wing it on the thing. This is where children's ministry struggles. We want to be, the brand of, we're just goldfish and glitter. No, we're not. No, we're not. We are about discipleship. We're about studying God's Word. And I don't want that to be my reputation. I want this to be my reputation. We are rock solid discipleship makers. And when you put that on the bar there, you're going to attract people to come right behind you and push you guys forward, because there's people in your church that want to move forward on discipleship. And get them on board, get your core people, and then start gaining people on it. And it's that expectation out. We make our training mandatory for our launches. And if you can't make it, you will come to a makeup training. Yes, makeup training. And those are not as fun as the actual fun trainings. But we make them do it because it's mandatory. And if we let them just skip it, what is that going to say the next time training comes up?
That is so good. And I think, like you just said, the accountability piece is so huge, and that there's got to be, whether it's the video training on the first end and there's the form they fill out, or it's the in-person or Zoom, having that accountability. I'd be curious, how do you keep track? I know, in my last church, we had a large number of volunteers and a couple of different training methods, and just keeping track of all of that and who was where and who had done what. What is your system for kind of knowing where people are in the program?
In the training process?
In the training process, yes.
Yeah, for sure. The church planning center, people check into our trainings. Now, we don't send this is what we don't do. When I don't send a thing out to all my volunteers to say, are you planning on coming to training? I don't give them that option.
Not optional, right?
Do not say yes or no. No, don't do that. This is mandatory training, period. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then they check in at the event. And of course, we get a list back of who did not come.
Love that.
That's where our coordinators then contact them and say, the makeup training is on this date. Right now, if they can't make that other makeup training, then I have my coordinators literally meet with them one-on-one. It's painful, which motivates my coordinators to get them to the training on top of it. So
it does.
Across the board, because no one wants all this time. It just takes up so much time. And again, create the culture. And our trainings, we have good snacks. And when they come in, it's fun, it's purposeful, there's energy in the room.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss that. That's a good time.
that's the other side of the coin, is the community side of things. And that y'all have developed community within your trainings, that there's this sense of, oh, I'm going to see so-and-so, or I'm going to get to, participate in the game or have the prize or have the snack, and there's this anticipation built around it. How did you get to that place? Was it always like that, or how did y'all build momentum to get to that place?
You just have to keep building. I mean, when we were smaller, it was smaller, right? But you still had to make it good enough. I mean, when you're smaller, there's perks to being small. I mean, you can bring in better food in the beginning, right. And then as we get bigger, like for us, now you're just going to get a caramel apple or something simple, right? And some water because we're so big. But when you're small, you can make it pretty intimate together and have a meal together or something like that. And as you grow, you're going to be less of them, unless you have a huge budget, which I really don't have that much, but it's just part building the culture into it for sure. And I think too, making every minute count.
Yeah.
Every minute count. You have to have, we actually have what we call it, I don't know what to call it. It's basically a whole script of our training. So everything is scripted out. Like when they walk in, 15, like we'll tell them if our training starts at 6:30, we say registrations at 6:15 and snacks at 6:15. Because at 6:30, we start training, right? And then we go and we're done by 8 o'clock. An hour and a half, and we're done. We do provide childcare if they want. They have to pay for it, $5 for a family. It's cheap. Yeah. But we're finding out that parents could care less about that. They'll get their own babysitters. That's at our church. They don't take us up on that. I'm not sure why, but we were surprised ourselves because we thought that would be our win, and it's not really the win. So anyhow, whatever your church needs, but whatever it takes to get them there, you want to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. Good.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. I feel like a lot of insight into, I think the biggest pieces are the vision, the accountability, and the intentionality, and saying, how do I, if you're not sure where to start, you start with the vision. Like you said, get those 5-6 people in the room. You may say, I only have, okay, you and your spouse or you and one other person, get in the room, get on the board. What is the heart of our ministry? Where are we falling short? Where are we hitting the mark? And evaluating where do we need to train to match up to that. I love that y'all even offer, kind of to summarize for the sake of everybody listening, you've got that summer kickoff, that fall kickoff. Now, is that because you have a different set of volunteers over the summer?
Yes, very good question. What makes our church very unique and very intentional is our school year volunteers. We have 2 services. They commit for the whole school year, every week. And we find substitutes for them. It's a whole other thing. And then we give them the off ramp for the summer, and we get a whole set of summer volunteers that serve every week. And then their off ramp is the fall. Our summer volunteers substitute for our school year, and our school year volunteers can substitute for our summer. We don't switch curriculum, so we get a long-term group of people who know how we teach, so we can find substitutes and move people in and out like what we do. But we do give on-ramps and off-ramps for sure of our volunteers.
That's great because it gives, if you have people, I've had conversations about how often should people serve? How do we make the commitment? How do we do? But that's a nice in-between model of, hey, you're going to get the summer off. Or if you're not sure if you want to commit for a full school year, commit for the summer, 3 months, 2.5 months.
Right. Easy on our sub list, commit to our sub list.
Yes.
So those people who come to me like, well, I can serve every other week. I'm like, that's great. You're going to be on my sub list, and we're going to call you every other week to fill in a spot for our regular kids. Because the reality is kids only come 50% of the time, 60% of the time.
Sure.
So if our volunteers are changing, with our kids are changing, they will never build that relationship to really feel like they belong in your ministry.
Right.
So that's why we kind of ask our volunteers to step it up to a higher level. And I know a lot of churches are just one service. But we get it. You know what I mean? The every other week thing, it's totally fine. But if you could ever get to that every week model, as a children's ministry director, it saves you a heck of a lot of time playing the matching game of who's on when, you know what I mean? So that's a good target to put on the wall too, is to get consistent volunteers who serve faithfully. So
it really is. And well, like you said, when you set that bar and when you explain the vision, I know, I've been in churches where we use like the Amazing Life curriculum, and they have a lot of stats on, and they show you the, kids are only attending 1 to 2 times a month at the most. So if the volunteer only served, and it shows you see them like twice over the course of 2 or 3 months. And You can't build relationship on that. So just when you kind of get that in front of people, they go, oh, that makes sense. So again, like you said, there are exceptions. If you're a one service church, that's very difficult to ask someone to serve. Maybe you could do a month on, a month off, figure out what works for you, and work with your church. But whenever you can do that once a week model, it's not impossible. There are people who will do it when you raise that expectation, and you explain the vision. I think that's key to everything we're saying here. Every training needs to be infused with vision. Why do we not have snacks? Why do we have snacks? Why do we have this? Why don't we have that? It's explaining the why so that the volunteers can come behind it. And I think when we have the why out there, and when we're giving them an inside scoop of like, hey, this is why it gives them this sense of trust, like that we're trusting them with information, and that we're including them in the process and saying, hey, this is, we've been listening, maybe, we did a survey and we heard what you guys said. Here's why we are doing it. Here's why we're not doing it. And just having that open line of communication, I think, is so critical.
Right. Hey, and you know what? You just mentioned that survey thing. We do a survey with our volunteers at the end of the school year all the time. And we ask, how would you, how can we train you better?
Love that.
Again, it's asking them that question. We also do surveys after our training to evaluate our training and saying, which part of it was effective? How could we improve? And just keeping that open, like you said, that open line of communication out there, and being teachable yourself shows them that they can be teachable too. So
good. Yeah. And you may be listening and going, I don't know where to start, and I don't even know how to do this. And I would encourage you for always start with prayer. Go to the Lord. Set up a time to connect with me. Connect with Kris. Well, we can talk with you. But I would also say, if you don't feel like your gifting is in this area, ask the Lord to show you someone who is gifted in this area. You may have someone in your church that is extremely organized, that is leadership oriented, maybe works in something like HR or management, that would say, hey, I'm not going to serve with the kids, but I will oversee your training process, and that they could help you make sure people attend. You may have someone that loves events, and you could say, hey, would you oversee the snacks and any decor, the slides, whatever that is. Like, get yourself a team of people, because when you're hearing all this, you may be thinking, I can't manage to do all of that. You may not, especially if you're bivocational. You probably can't do it all by yourself. But there are people in your church who have the gifts of event planning, people management, leadership, that would say, hey, I'll contribute to a training twice a year, or lunch and learns once a quarter, like that. That's totally manageable for something like a church.
It's really is true. And when you get it set up too, it's like, now what do I teach on?
Yes.
And this is where, I don't know what your curriculum is, and maybe you have that with yours too, but like the one that we use, Discoveryland, is we've actually built in the skill training. The PowerPoints there, the presentation notes are there on how to tell an effective Bible lesson, how to do classroom management, how do you do this? And again, every curriculum is different.
Yep.
But if you have one, you push out saying, do you have a training track that we can invest in? Because that way your training matches your curriculum, which the people are actually using.
That's
so
good.
Always nice. And it's, it's nice when it's packaged into it all together. So you don't have to create anything in it. So you can, there's only so much this person can do, right? And when it's there. And it's so helpful to bring it all together. So.
And I would even encourage, if you're in like more of a small rural church, or like I've mentioned on podcasts before, I'm attending a church with like 70 people. And so, putting on a training might be a lot for us to do when we've only got 8 to 10 kids. But you may be able to say, hey, there's the church down the road and the church down the road, and we're going to collaborate, and we're going to do a annual training, a biannual training, and we'll take turns leading it, or we'll bring someone in from, I know we've got a very big church down the road, so sometimes we partner with them. Hey, can we bring our volunteers to your training? What are you doing? Can we come to you? And we'll bring snacks, or whatever. But Don't be afraid to build those relationships, and go in the I Love KidMin Facebook group. That is a great place to say, hey, what's everybody doing for training? Is anyone located near me? Would anyone want to collaborate? Because it doesn't have to be done in isolation. And you may find somebody that's already has a great system and can piggyback off of that and then help them make it better, or vice versa. You may have a great system, reach out to someone near you and invite them to be a part of what you're doing.
Right. And that is so true. I mean, we have people come to our trainings, all these trainings I'm talking about, we have different churches show up. And part of it is because it's the same, like for us, if we're a bigger church, of course we want to help any other church. Like if you live in Wisconsin near me, come on over, call me. You can come to our trainings and even just to get ideas from our training to take back to your own church. If you're the director, we have a lot of that happening here. And that's the perk of being just a normal church, being in a church, right? Because we're like, we want to help anybody who needs help. So yeah, that is such a big thing. So don't be afraid of the bigger church. They want to help you for sure.
That is so true. I think sometimes we get so caught up in this competition or, whatever the spirit is. Natalie Runyon shared on Tuesday night at conference. It was so good. But she talked about just not, and I won't steal her thunder. You have to get conference to go. But she talked about not letting comparison and how Elizabeth and Mary and, Elizabeth was pregnant and could have thought, well, Mary's stealing my thunder because she's pregnant with the Son of God and I'm only pregnant with John the Baptist. But there was this beauty of like Elizabeth recognizing her role and Mary's role and how God was using them both. And I think we in the church get so caught up in, oh, well, that church is big and they're,
right.
Or, oh, that church is small. No, like we are all serving different roles within our community and we're called to do that. And so let's, instead of feeling against each other, let's partner together and figure out what do we bring to the table that they need? What do they bring to the table that we need?
Right. It's very true. Very, very true.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for all of that. I'm wishing we had conversations when I was full-time in children's ministry because this was really good. So I hope this has been encouraging to some of our listeners. Are there ways that they can connect with you to chat more, or do you have any resources available that they could, email you and get anything like that?
Absolutely. If they go to dlglobal.org, that's our website for Discoveryland Global, and just put in the note part. I want to connect with Kris. They're going to hook you up and set a time up to meet with me. For sure, we're ready to consult, answer your questions, do whatever you want. And again, that connects, even though that's the nonprofit that we have. The nonprofit is based from this church, but it's just the way the communication runs as you go through. But it's dlglobal.org, and you can get in connection with us. So, and we're always happy to help. We're, again, normal people, normal church doing ministry at different levels. I mean, my team is made up lots of smaller churches, multi-location. So we have a portable church, we have a small church. When you say church of 70, that's a real thing.
Yep.
And so we cater to all different sizes of churches too. So yeah, happy to help. Very much willing to help anybody. So
we'll get that website so y'all can find that in the podcast notes. So make sure you look for that. But Kris, I would love if you would just close us out in prayer before we wrap up.
Sure. Great. And God, I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and just to recognize that our kids desperately need you, Lord. So I pray that everybody listening will invest in their training. God, give them the creativity, surround them with quality, spiritually mature people who are on fire to reach kids for Christ. God, move in powerful ways. And Lord, I just pray that these trainings that these guys will eventually put into action will just be amazing and effective. And God, most importantly, that hundreds and thousands of kids will come to know you as their Lord and Savior and be discipled so that they can stand firm in this world. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kris, and thank you all. We'll see you for next week's episode. That was a great conversation. I told Kris when we stopped recording that I wish I'd known some of that when I was in full-time children's ministry. I hope it's encouraging and helpful to you and that it's something you can start applying even this weekend. Training is so critical, and I believe that as you put some of these things into place, your team is going to grow and thrive in new and amazing ways. Don't forget, if you want to connect with Kris, you can visit discoverylandglobal.org or feel free to email me at hannah@kidsmatter.com and I'll help make sure you get connected with her. You can also check out Call to Care at compassion.com/C2C register. We hope you had a great time with this episode, and we'll see you for the next one. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.